Hey everybody, welcome to this week's installment of Taproom Tuesdays with Jay. I'm here again with head brewer Ian Powell, and we are going to talk about British beer styles. Based on our last segment, we talked about the Old Brick Bitter, where we're going to actually drink it and show you the awesome new can. So this is our Old Brick. We're also going to showcase one of our popular British styles here, the Hooligan Mild Ale. So Ian's going to talk to you about these great new beers, or one great old one and one great new one. All right.
Yeah, so these two actually are very specifically English styles. They're two of the oldest and more traditional English beers, a mild and a bitter. Both of these beers are showcasing some a little more classic English ingredients. So they both use English origin Maris Otter, which has kind of been one of the gold standard of English malts for a very long time. And they both use Challenger hops, which are a piece of or a derivative of the classic English Fuggle. And East Kent Goldings, which are two of the earliest award-winning hops that kind of were used for both milds and bitters, but also then turned into some of the first IPAs. So English beers.
Yeah, so the mild is historically one of the first British beer styles,
One of the first,
right?
yeah. It was generally a lower alcohol, sessionable concept beer. That would tend to be malt forward. Yet, as we were saying last week with the ESB, a lot of malts that were originally malted or kilned with wood, which so actually they're probably a bit more smoky or a bit more char than you ever see in a modern mild.
This has got a nice malt forward, like Ian's talking about. Really great caramel base to it, I would say.
Yeah, there's
a little bit of residual
A
sweetness.
little bit of malt sweetness, and there's this nice bready, almost biscuity characteristic that comes through with that Maris Otter that I think is really kind of exemplary of a lot of traditional British styles.
Now, of course, we don't have one in our portfolio right now, but we all know a brown ale is a pretty popular British style as well. Can you tell us the differences, the principal differences between, say, a mild and a brown?
Well,
'cause they are fairly similar.
They are. You could see some people might make a mild that would be really like a small brown ale, a low alcohol brown ale. Your brown's going to tend to be a little higher in alcohol, and there's also going to be a bit more in the way of kilned or roast malt. So you're going to get a bit more dark color coming through than. While this color would technically probably be considered a light brown on the proper Hooligan, it is not necessarily a brown ale, which is going to have a bit more robust, darker malt characteristics.
Now, is that darker color also going to make more of a sharper flavor, a little bit more robust flavor
Some browns,
with that stronger ABV?
Some browns, I think like a Newcastle, are not necessarily what I would describe as robust, but definitely sharper. So.
Right.
The hotter that you kiln those malts, the more you get burnt ends, particularly of and less moisture in your malt, you're gonna get those sharper flavors. So that dark, that black patent that you might see going into a brown is gonna give a bit more astringency, whereas the mild is a much more round malt characteristic.
Gotcha. So let's segue nice and easy right into the Old Brick. As promised, during our last video, there's that new can. Look at how gorgeous our Linden Street Series cans are looking. Big shout out to Bree Spillman for designing yet another killer can for us. And you want to talk about the Old Brick? I know you talked about it last week, but now that we're pouring it.
So yeah, it's an ESB or an English bitter. It's lightly hoppy. Don't be deceived by the bitter name. It's definitely a precursor to IPAs. It's nowhere near as much hop bitterness or hop characteristic as you find in even an English IPA, or even say or even more so a modern IPA. But it does have a good slightly lighter malt body still, you know, the workhorse is going to be that classic English Maris Otter. But we gave it a little bit of West Coast hop flavor. It's an Oregon Comet that has a nice little bit of grassiness and pear on it that kind of jumps out.
It's got a little bit more fruit forward.
Yeah, that I think really accentuates actually the like the balance of the malt base that's really demonstrated in this beer. So this is an old school English malt bill and a classic English yeast, but some West Coast hops to give it a little twist.
Now it is, of course, more bitter than the mild, but not as bitter as, say, an IPA.
100%.
Is that bitterness just because of the addition of more hops to the character, or is there other yeast or malt profiles that make that bitterness come back?
It's
come
hop
through a little bit
bitterness
more?
and when we're going to use them. So this
Cool.
got a significant early hop addition. You know, it's a 90-minute boil. You get that
Because the longer the
isomerized
hops
alpha
are in the
edge.
boil, the more hop flavor you're going to get out of the.
Well, the more bitterness
product.
you're going to get, right?
Absolutely,
Your
yeah.
isomerizing alpha acids, late additions, you're getting a lot more of the fruit, the what I would call the aromatics or flavor characteristics of
Gotcha.
the hop. Whereas you get bitterness from the longer additions in a boil.
Cool. Well, there you have it. Two of the most popular British styles. Of course, IPA probably being the most popular, but we'll talk about those in a whole other video. So, as always, thanks for tuning in and drink more beer.
Cheers.